Thank you very much. So, yeah, it's definitely been an interesting day. I'm from Munich, actually, and I moved out to California to avoid any of this rain. Guess I haven't been that lucky today, but in general, I think I'm doing pretty well. In terms of what I wanted to talk about, again, fitting, surfing the technical waves that are out there. I think I've been in technology for about 20 years, and it feels that all I've ever done is, similar to surfing, paddle out to try to catch the next wave. And sometimes it's been a ride like this that you can see here, and it's timing. You get the right wave, you ride it all the way in, and you just feel damn good about yourself. And sometimes, equally often perhaps, it's been more like this experience where you felt you were catching a big wave. You probably did catch a big wave, even worse, and you really kind of didn't really surf to the end. And it was on YouTube perhaps with some videos. And I wanted to talk to you about that. I know it's on YouTube, so I definitely have to watch my language. Even though I'm from Munich, I spent some time in England, and swearing is just one of the great passions that English people have. So, I was surprised to hear that this was on YouTube and podcasted, and then I was like, oh my god, this is gonna be like, So I'll try to pull myself together. Anyway, so it's my personal lessons around what I call kind of some of the digital media disruptions that have happened. From my perspective, I mean, I think I could fill some books and stories and talk for hours, but here's some highlights from the things that I've learned in the past. First of all, let's start out kind of describing what kind of waves there have been. And so I think, mentioned that I was at Quark. That was one of those first waves, right? When everything went digital. I think where people were burning CDs, certainly on one side, Nero was a part of that, but also producing it. You remember people like Blockbuster, perhaps? DVDs and stuff like that. And, of course, people were reading newspapers at that time, and then it went slowly to the web. And I was certainly in that wave, participating in that wave with a company called Quark, and a company called Nero. It was largely desktop, if you remember that time. Maybe laptops came a little bit. There was some highly innovative people that had a laptop at the end of the 90s, but it was very big. So it went on from there, and obviously we know where it's gone. In this day and age, it is really gone into streaming. It's been, the Netflixes of this world, the Spotifys of this world. It's the self-creation platform, right? In my days, when I was basically working at Quark, we were getting these creative professionals to produce digital content at a fraction of the cost that they used to have, for a few $1,000s. But now, with Instagram, Facebook, everybody's a publisher at zero cost. So that's really cool, if you think about it, how technology is really helping everybody to be empowered. Of course, there's a lot of rubbish out there, which is why filtering the internet is probably one of the biggest trends to bring you the gems that you should be looking at versus everything that's out there. But ultimately, it is really an empowerment. And I think the next wave, of course, mobile is a big driver of that empowerment. And the next wave is really where my new company is situated, which is another big wave is coming. And I think you've all heard of Alexa and Echo and voice applications. I don't know how much you've heard about chatbots, for example, where people can have real-time natural language conversations, not just on voice with these weird devices that talk back to you, but also with these chatbots that start to help you. And that's going to really bring some new technology challenges, but also some new empowerment in terms of how people communicate with each other to the world. So that's another one. So these are kind of some of the things that are happening out there in that digital revolution, and you could spend an hour on each trend, but I know I was asked just to talk for 20 minutes to get some questions afterwards. So I'll hold myself back and talk about my key lessons that I found working for all these different companies. First one, it doesn't matter. I'm a product guy, so maybe I'm a little bit driven by that products matter. But even Jeff Bezos said, the time is over where you spend 70% of your time talking about a product and 30% building it. It's just the opposite, right? I mean, in this day and age, when we used to create a product, it took like 3 months until we got the customer complaints back early on. So we already had made 20 million until we realized that the product was shit. Oh, there we go. So ultimately, now it's real time. Even if you create an app and it's free, you get a lot of people saying, this is crap, I don't want to use this, and really blaming you for this waste of their time that you've just basically asked them to download an app for 1 minute, install, and use it. And so it's really changed, but ultimately nothing, and that's even more important than ever, beats a really good product market fit. And you have to have the patience. If you're an entrepreneur, or if you're working at a big product company, any company, if you're working on products, you gotta figure that out. And so to me, when I was at Quark, we were just in this perfect setup where we basically developed this Quark Express desktop publishing tool where it just was a really good fit. It took us, by the way, 3 iterations to get it right. Like it took us like 4 or 5 years until we actually really got it to print how these creative professionals wanted to be. But ultimately, it revolutionized digital publishing, right? What basically was done by PayStuff, if you can imagine that, was now digitized, bringing the cost down. Not just it was a good product market fit, this is like 100x saving if you're doing this. So that's just kind of enormous, lucky, good timing, all those things. But it doesn't matter whether you're doing the garage, the do-it-yourself car, or whatever it is. You gotta think about, is your product there? How do you market it is the second thing, but you have to really engage with your customers until it's there. The second, now this is where I'm starting to fall off a little bit of that way, lesson that I learned is that ultimately losing the focus on your core customers can actually be quite deadly. I think you mentioned that when you grow and you start to outgrow yourself. I saw that both at Quark and at Nero happening. You know, you mentioned we were 1,000 employees, 280 million revenues. You know, we saw, of course, the internet coming along. We saw that print publishing was going to the HTML era or to the web era. We weren't that blind. We could see that in the 90s. But because we talked to the same customers every day that were really thinking about graphic design as precision, as absolute perfection in terms of color and typography and kerning, that the web wasn't good enough. That wasn't good enough for that. So we went out and created, crazy as we might have been at that time, we said, you know what, all those internet explorers, all that HTML, that doesn't work. We're going to create our own multimedia browser. So we created this own internet explorer, so to speak, this own Netscape navigator, so to speak, and it was amazing. It could do everything you could ever imagine, but it was 1997, and it was 14.4K, and videos weren't running, and animations weren't running, and control wasn't really there. HTML was the way to go. We just missed it. We didn't even see our own customers exporting content out of our own desktop publishing tool in HTML. We just missed it. Question?
Yeah, so given the fact that all those things were known, bandwidth was a problem,
yeah,
content was a problem, et cetera, how did you internally miss that? Or did somebody raise their hand and go, guys, it isn't going to work?
Yeah, we missed it.
Did you ignore the naysayers?
Yeah, exactly. I think you get so full of yourself that you believe. The question was, how did we miss it, right? We missed it not in terms of concept about what's happening, but we missed it in terms of our realization that these graphic designers that we were having as customers were actually ready to be with a good enough experience. They weren't waiting for that next generation multimedia experience for another 3 to 5 years until it was ready. What we did is we said, let's wait until that's ready and put that on ice. And then we started doing a lot of other things that had nothing to do with our core business, our core creative professionals, which is a huge mistake and ultimately cost Quark, which is still in existence today, by the way. How many companies can say that? But instead of having another $200 million business, we had, a $280 million business. So it could have been Adobe, but it was not. Next thing I wanted to talk about briefly is, perseverance. It's really a virtue. I think nobody has that. It's the patience. I think we're all, and I'm certainly included myself, and my team can attest to that, very, very impatient. We want to drive fast. We want to get that product market fit quickly. We believe that the product market fit's already there while it's not. Everything else telling you that it's not scalable, but we want to scale it. So it's really something where you have to be patient. And you just mentioned the example in terms of why did you miss that? Well, guess what? Somebody else did miss that. Macromedia. Macromedia did HTML. And Macromedia did a browser just like we did, just it was running as a plugin. 3 to 5 years later than we were, but it was working. And so that's really the thing that I think is equally important. You have to realize when you're in this whole game, in my opinion at least, that you're running a marathon, not a sprint. If you really believe in it, that this is the next generation, you got to figure it out. We didn't spend the time to figure it out. Why wasn't it successful? Was it the technology? Was it the bandwidth? Was it ultimately how we were approaching the problem from the creative professional? We just iced it. Instead of just continuing to patiently plug along and get it solved, someone else did, and they did exactly the same thing. So it's timing, patience, and staying with it and sticking to it. The other thing I wanted to share, which is a good one as well, disaster usually strikes when you think you're cruising. And this happens to all tech companies, I think, right? It happened to Microsoft even, when they kind of built too much into their own mantra operating systems, etc., and then almost lost it, right, until they rejuvenated themselves. An amazing company in terms of how many years it's been growing and all those things. But ultimately, when I came to Nero, the CD burning company that we talked about that everybody's used, of course it was great to have 300 million customers. And I could see exactly from my time at Quark what needed to get done. Focus on the core customers, which are advanced home hobbyists. Build a creative suite for advanced home hobbyists, which allow them to burn, backup, create videos, photos, all those things similar to what Office had done in terms of Office publishing, similar to what Adobe had done in terms of creative professionals. We were just going to do that for advanced hobbyists, and we did. And it was amazing. It was cool. It was great. We were doing record sales. It was super profitable. Everything seemed great until the iPad and the iPhone started to come. And you know, much smarter people than myself didn't see that coming, so I do have an excuse. But it wasn't even the iPhone, you know, that started to kind of appear in the time that we were really growing madly. It was actually the iPad. When the iPad came, PC sales went down. Well, guess what? When PC sales went down, our sales went down, because suddenly people weren't replacing their PC anymore, they weren't upgrading the software. It was a chain reaction. So when I first saw the sales falling off the cliff, it was literally like this. It was March, and then everything was on track, and then it was April, May, and we were like 30% down from what we'd expected to do in prior year. I mean, just like that, falling off a cliff. Now, we built the company at $100 million with 80 million profit. So 30-40% going down potentially, that was a big deal, right? Because you know that the only thing that you have in software, well, most of you know that, when operating hardware, is your people. That's your biggest expense. That's the leverage. That's how you make all that money once you get it going, because you know it's very easy to digitize that, scale that, etc. So when that didn't happen anymore, it was really a disaster for us, right? We really had to, of course we were already on mobile. We'd won major customers like Motorola, HTC. We'd won customers like Seagate. It wasn't we weren't making any money anymore, but we weren't making as much money as we needed to support the infrastructure that we built, believing that things were just going to be gravy forever. So that's the next lesson. Just, you know, it happens to everybody, I think, but it was a hard lesson, and I think it certainly taught me a lot for my future about kind of planning for the worst and hoping for the best versus just being too positive. I think you all know that. It's very simple. You know, in software, it's about the people. So if you get great people, that's the number one thing you should be focused on. Certainly as a CEO, culture is important. Setting the right rhythm, trying to be a leader that people want to work for. You know, you don't want to be the asshole, obviously, and everybody realizes that. And everybody realizes certainly that you sometimes have to be an asshole. But in general, you know, you should try to build something that everybody wants to go to work. Of course, Michael here over there said that this is the first time he's going to hear about our company strategy, so maybe I'm not doing so well. He was just joking, right? But anyway, it's really about the people, right? And don't get distracted by that. That's what's going to drive your value at the end of the day. And believe me, hire less people. When I was at Quark, we hired 1,000 people. We couldn't even count how many people were coming in. I didn't even know their name anymore. And the same happened at Nero at the end of the day. And once you have people and money coming in, you start doing a lot of products. Now you don't scale because you still have the same leadership team. You never change that, obviously, to scale with that. So you start really losing it. But if you're careful about that, trying to get the right people in. Then you can grow the processes, and then you can bring on new people. And your culture is really equally important, that you don't change it along the way. And so that's something that I would give as advice. And I've learned the hard lesson that when you ignore that, you start really not building the teams that you need to make you successful. The new learning I've found, when you work for these companies that are just such an amazing success, you don't really realize that it's great to have success because money is coming in and you can manage your own destiny. When you're founding a new company, like I've just done, like a year ago, you have to actually raise some money if you want to be ambitious. Gone are the days, I suppose, where engineers just work for stock options and believe in the future. Everybody does have a house to pay in LA or an apartment and wants to make a salary. So you want to be competitive, you need to be competitive. So for us, it was important to raise money, and I think we did. We raised 3.6 million, we're raising another 1.4. So somehow we managed to get our story across, which I believe, and I'll talk about it in a second, you'll love it, it's a great story, obviously, but it's not easy, right? You have to talk to a lot of people. And I think the only advice I can give for anybody building a company, when they do that, when they start going from bootstrapping or venture funding, get at least somebody on board that is going to help and get you through the thick and the thin, right? A lot of people will leave you along the way, but you have to have some guy that really believes in you, believes in that story and continues to support you. So I think that's important. Just don't get the money in. I've done that and it never works. Don't just get money in. If you can afford it, not just to get money in, get money in from somebody that really will help you and support you. And it takes longer than you think, so you have to be pessimistic about that. It takes at least 3 to 6 months to raise money of that size. You have to go to a lot of people to get to that person. So here we are. The next wave is coming. The fund is starting. So this is the next company that we're trying to build to catch that next wave. Of course, I mentioned all these great learnings that I've had, all these lessons should make it, really a no-brainer, right? This should be really, really successful. But I fear, along the way, all the lessons that I've learned will get some new lessons that I can share in a couple of years with you guys that we'll find out along the way. But this is what Stashimi is trying to do, is really trying to build something for that next generation of communication. And what we're trying to do is basically help musicians. There's about 3.4 million musicians out there. Obviously, everybody knows the top stars that have hundreds of millions of fans. And the way that these musicians are engaging with their fans is dramatically changing over the next few years. And there's 3 reasons for that, primarily, why that's changing. First of all, artists are not just what it seems, which is the music. What they make money with, only 9% on average of all of the revenues that they generate are done through selling licensed music. 59% now is live performances. Merchandise 6%, so on, so on, so on. It all adds up to 100%. And of course it differs a little bit by artists, but they're really a lifestyle brand, right? That's why they have all these followers on Instagram. They have all these followers on Facebook. All the news that you get to see are written about them. They're a lifestyle. And for them, it's important to bring that lifestyle across because obviously, like I said, the fan wants to engage with that and it's a big piece of how they make money. But that's really, really becoming difficult for them. Give you an example. On Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, when you follow somebody on those platforms, a branded page like an artist, only 16%, 16% of the content that artist publishes to you will ever end up in your feed organically, unless that artist pays a lot of money to get that content advertised to you. So that's a big problem. So just think about all the content that they produce, and now that compounds. So they're not reaching their audience anymore. It's pretty oversaturated. Staying connected across all these channels for the artist and the fan is a huge issue, right? Because you have to now multiply that by Facebook, Instagram, news sites, events, all those different things that this artist is producing or the fan is getting engaged with, and the fraction of it that's coming. Now you multiply it even more, the artist ultimately has to now go into these new channels. They have to create chatbots to communicate with their audience that gives relevant, reliable information. So it's really becoming a challenge, and we felt it's a huge opportunity. It's a huge opportunity, certainly for the music industry. I think it could be across any brand. So check out our product from that perspective. But if you're into music, it's really something, what we're doing is we're providing all the information that these artists provide. We have 50,000 artists indexed right now into a single stream about them that you can subscribe to on all the different platforms we support. Right now we're on the iPhone. We just released our first Stashimi bot. We're bringing out major artist bots with some big artists in Q1 where they can communicate with their audiences. And of course we also have Alexa voice experimental products where you can talk in voice to Alexa and say, hey, when's Drake coming to concert? I mean, stuff of course that some of it is there already, right? But we go deeper in all those things with the learnings that we have, and ultimately going back again, it's a natural language conversation. It's in voice, it's through messaging bots that you allow to happen. That results into the next big thing which people are talking about, which is artificial intelligence. Because you have to build the learnings. You have to know what people want. You have to expect then and predict what they should be getting in terms of information. It all starts, and it's just at the beginning with learning about how these things work. And so that's what this company that we're building is built around. The way we make money is a subscription model. So we basically, similar to MailChimp, probably all of you guys know MailChimp, we basically sell to the artist a subscription, and similar to MailChimp, it depends on the capabilities that they want and the number of subscribers, fan subscribers, fan people that they basically bring in through our platform and monitor, and they can see how they ultimately respond to everything that they publish in terms of tracking, etc. So we basically charge different modules, right? Starts at 10, 20 bucks, goes all the way up to enterprise customers at multiple hundreds of dollars. So that's how we kind of make our business, so to speak. And again, it's just at the beginning, many learnings will come. It's been a fun ride so far, many lessons learned. Most people always want to hear about the stuff when you're falling off the cliff. People never want to hear about the successes. So I hope I mixed it a bit up. And I appreciate you guys coming out in the rain and listening to me. Thank you.
Great job, Jürgen. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And absolutely, I mean, it's good to see the things that you're working on and the lessons that you've learned from your previous work with Quark and Nero. And that's actually just a really great lesson for us, is that the things that we've learned in our previous jobs or projects can be applied to things that we're currently working on now. And hopefully we're learning our lessons, and we wish you the best of luck. This looks like a really cool platform for connecting artists with their followers. We're going to open up to Q&A now. So if you have a question, raise your hand. John will walk around with the mic. If you'd like to share a story or have a comment on the presentation, please save it for offline. Jürgen, will you be hanging out with us a little bit? Okay, cool. So if you guys want to share stories, let's do it offline after Q&A section is over. All right.
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation. With Stashimi and Alexa, do you happen to know, especially for product designers, if there is a pipeline that we can resource where we can actually develop the connectivity between what is innately the online of everything with Stashimi through Alexa and then through product development? For the product designers, we're looking for some substantial way of connecting to those resources. Is there anything like that that you can provide for some of us as the designers?
Just to make sure I understand the question, in terms of resources, what do you, just give me an example of what you mean.
I'm a product developer, and
right.
We're looking at integrating. So I'm a product developer also, and we're looking at integrating Alexa and potentially looking at a platform like yours to, so we're looking for support in those endeavors. What do you provide for some of us as for designers?
Yeah, so I mean, I think obviously we're kind of in a way right now, our own man, so to speak, right? But what we do, of course, as I mentioned, building a platform is everything that we do is documented so that you can create your own applications on top of it. So the platform that we've created, just 30 seconds, indexes for 50,000 everything about that artist and puts it into a single content management system. And we have some intelligence around it, right? All their social posts, all their Tumblr, how engaged those posts were, etc., etc. And you can integrate with that platform through an SDK that we've developed that we're already using for some clients, then you can create your own applications. Of course, more from a networking perspective, we're more than happy to offline chat about how we can help you in the world that's outside of Stashimi. But certainly inside the Stashimi world, we view us as somebody that can kind of be the music hub, the Wikipedia of the next generation, so to speak, for music that you can tap into with different kind of product designs and applications.
Over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Jürgen. That was good high energy presentation for this gloomy day. And I think the most exciting thing to me is hearing, what's the edge, what's the next wave. It's been very, very engaging. And congratulations on keeping it PG. It's really good. So when you're talking about, I guess, channel saturation, it seems like you're, creating or taking advantage of a new channel that it sure seems like it's going to be immediately saturated. When you're talking about hard push like Messenger, that I'm struggling with after updating my iPhone OS, and I'm trying to figure out how to shut off all these buzzings and all the push. So I can see it's a compelling number that 16% of the information reaches the audience. I guess if 50% reaches the audience, isn't everybody pushing? I'm just going to trail off now. I don't see how there's a solution to putting more information into people's ears without, I guess, like giving us bigger brains, or having us work less hours. I guess. So where can you put that together for me?
Yeah, totally. I think that's a great comment, right? That's what I was implying in the question that was asked earlier about having to have intelligence that maps to the learnings that you have about a customer. So we know, as an example, when they fan, and from all the research and all the tests we've done, we've had a mobile app out there, very successful on the iPhone for a long time now. Well, a long time for a startup is 7 months, but if you get thousands and thousands of people, and the learning is basically through the push and all those things that you optimizes, and the focus groups that you have is, what is the content that they're interested in, and what is the content that they're not interested in as a fan, right? What is the must-have to push and whatnot? And ultimately, that's what it comes down to. And what we learned from our industry in the perspective of where we're working is that the 3 most important things for a fan is new song out from the fan perspective, that somebody's putting something out, a new album, etc. People want to know about that. And they want to know about a concert near me from that band, right? Those are really fundamentals that people want to know. Now, beyond that, you can push anything, right?
You said 3 things?
Sorry?
You said 3 things?
Right, songs, it's songs, it's breaking news. The fan is actually interested, 3 things. Breaking news is another one, right? The fan is really interested when, it sounds a bit weird, but when Kanye West checks into rehab, that's really interesting for fans. And we picked that up because we basically see news sites, we monitor hundreds of news sites, so we know when there's a breaking story, not just any story, but we analyze what stories are out there. So we just push you the story for you have to be, first of all, into that channel, right? You opt in to that channel of Kanye West, and then we give you that story if it's a breaking story. So it's that, but you're right, once you sell the subscription to the artist, they might do things that will not retain that customer, where they unsubscribe, where they give them every social feed in their messaging inbox. And I think that's the art that we have to work together hand in hand with the customer to show them through our platform when they're retaining, when they're pushing the right content, and then when they're losing retention rates. That's the only magic I suppose there is, but I think it's the intelligence of the content and mapping it to the relevancy of what somebody's interested in.
Hi Jürgen, nice talk. Curious, what are some of the methods you're using to introduce your product service to new customers? How do you market this?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, because it's artists, what we focus on is a strategy of artists first. So we are working now, I can't publicize it because we're coming out next quarter, probably with, in terms of labels, with the top 3 label in the world to bring out some very interesting chatbots and applications. we're working with top 5 artists in the world to bring up these new clients. Because I think with everything, you have to bring something where people go, wow, how did that work? Because the most disappointing thing about chatbots today is, they're kind of interesting for a minute, and they die on you. And they don't deliver anything of value anymore, right? Outside of customer service, perhaps. So that's the key now, building these reference bots and showing artists how you can really build next generation engagement. Because for them, it's very, very difficult now. This is new technology, and of course, everybody's kind of afraid of new technology in a way, right? What does it do? What does it give me? What's my voice gonna be? What does that mean? There's a robot behind there answering my questions, right? So we have to really set out these references, which are happening right now and going out in Q1. Yeah, I'm more than happy to, just to stay connected to Stashimi and we'll find out some of those. That's the first step. And then we roll it out from there.
Over here. Hi, thanks for the presentation. It was awesome.
Thank you.
Having such a stable kind of experience and background in developing, what would you give as your #1 piece of advice to someone looking at not just building an app, right, but building more of a platform?
Yeah, that's a great question. First of all, I always thought about building platform versus apps. So even Quark, when we built Quark Express, the reason why it was successful, mind-bogglingly successful, was because we built a plugin interface. So we always knew that we weren't going to be able to do everything to everybody. That a catalog was published differently than a newspaper. That a magazine and an ad was published differently and produced different than all of the above, or the other things. So we worked with developers, thousands of developers, and built this little interface for them where they could plug into Quark Express and create these specific applications that make catalog publishing really cool, like integrating, for example, the commerce system of a catalog to bring out the price into the page right there in Actual, stuff like that. So when you think about a platform, you have to really determine how does your product fit, first of all, from a base perspective. And then that really has to work and meet a need in itself. Otherwise, you go nowhere. The second with Facebook is an example, right? First, that product had to do something in terms of social networks, etc., until people started to integrate with it. There was a platform provided. And then, obviously that's a big scale. And then, you have to think about how are people going to use it, right? You really have to build out these studies, these case studies, and engage with the developer community and try to bring them on board in terms of what you're trying to do and help them out and trying to also give them the opportunity, because they're not doing it for fun. They're doing it for money. So you have to be doing something that works first into your core product before you can announce it being a platform, so to speak, right? Because there has to be people that drive value from it other than your product. So building a platform is a mindset, I suppose, but you still have to have a core product that's really amazing and works and does a base use case. If that helps.
Over here.
So just got to tell you, I was in NBC back in like the late 90s and having to work with artists. Yeah, we got to go to Quark, and Quark, sometimes it works well, sometimes it doesn't. So it's just kind of interesting. You've touched so many people along the way with Nero and stuff. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and insights. So how did you develop, or do you have a target market, and how have you developed that? How did you know like where you wanted? Because you talk about artists, there's like GarageBand guys and gals, all the way up to the big stars. So how are you defining and designing what you're going to go after market-wise?
That's a great question. I think it's, I was going to think about it yesterday night. I thought about some books that would help along the way to read if anybody's really going deep, and I can certainly share that if you want. Most of you might know them, but there's a lot of great books like Crossing the Chasm, etc. And they talk about at the end of the day your beachhead, and that's really what it's about. You have to establish your beachhead. You can't go after everybody to answer that first piece of the question. But we knew, one, we're a startup, we want to make money, and two, to bring a scale platform to the GarageBand would require a self-service platform. That everything has to work out of the box for somebody just to go in there and plug this all together and create their own chatbot and get amazing results. So we figured that the best way to start from those two things, and also of course from just the market perception that these superstars were on it, is to start at the top. right? Even to the virtue of customizing the product for them in a way that we could drive once we've done 5 to 10 customizations, some learnings out of it that then would be applicable to the rest of the world. So the way I look at it is, look, there's these super top 100 artists, top 1,000, then there's the next 5,000, etc., etc., etc. And that's kind of a 3 to 5 year graduation that we have to go through until we can satisfy the garage band for free, that they can really set this up and still feel really happy before they give us $10 a month.
Okay, so next question.
Yeah.
So kudos to you for noting that strategy is really important.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a lot of talk, we've been talking a lot about technology, but fundamentally, until you figure out what you really need to do qualitatively and who you're going to do it with first, you know, everything else is just a science project, and you're probably going to go off the rails. So that said, so you've got labels kind of in the pipeline, but you're not announcing yet. So you're not even really not even serving early adopters. You're really sort of serving the enthusiasts that are just interested in it because it's brand new and exciting. But so what are sort of going to be the business metrics, and do you have sort of feedback loops so somebody can sort of say, you know, before and after Stashimi, here's what lifted, and do you have any insights based on your really early users, kind of what the lift is for these different channels and things?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like when you develop a mobile app, right? I mean, I think at the end of the day, it hits a few things, which is the number of subscribers. Actually, even an email list is comparable to chatbots. It's the number of subscribers, and it's the open rate, right? And it's the retention rates in terms of the people that unsubscribe. That's the base things that you have to track and be able to show that this is going in the right direction, that people are ultimately going there. The second thing is, so it's working, right? Versus the other mechanisms that they have, and it's less expensive and it's more effective. The second thing is, then you go beyond that, you talk about, you know, what kind of engagement are people having, right? Are they having it with people that I'm making money with? Are they having it with things that I'm taking, like, am I basically selling more tickets? Am I selling more merchandise? Am I getting more people driven to my Spotify account and listen to my music or my YouTube video because I still get paid for that? So it's more as like, how is that actually helping me and monetize my brand, and taking that back to the artist and saying, here's the metrics, your subscriber base is engaged, they're being well retained, etc., comparable to those other marketing vehicles that you have, hopefully at an equal or better level, right? When you look at email saturation, I mean, it's not very positive, right? So hopefully you can expand on top of that, and then ultimately you can also show over time that they're actually making better business. With tracking everything about that customer, right?
Do you have any examples though of somebody like before and after?
Yeah, I mean, we're working with some, we're working with some artists in terms of, right now we launched the native app, right? So we've done activations with, you can actually go on our website and see some of the people, local artists like Selection, Mr. Carmack, etc., G-Eazy, there's others in the pipeline. Solange, we just did something with. So it's some of these artists that are emerging or already quite well established, and we do activation with them, and we basically track the retention rates, the messaging, all those things with them already, and see what's working, what's not working. But it is, and to go back to your point, so I'm saying we're launching next quarter really in more scale. It is at the beginning, right? These platforms are at the beginning. We're learning with these platforms. We're developing things that might be standard in these platforms in a year from now. And we have to develop them ourselves because the insights aren't there. We don't have to just support Facebook Messenger, we have to support Kik and Line and WeChat and all those other messaging platforms, so it becomes quite a complex problem. But before rambling on, I think we've had some good, significant learnings that we're good enough to bring on board, think about it that way, some of those artists and labels to actually roll this out with us and pay for it. That's already, for us, a good sign for product market fit. Where that will take, we'll work hard on it.
Jürgen, one last question. So Stashimi, you said, is mainly focused on musicians and helping them build their lifestyle brand through your platform. What about companies and their goals to develop themselves as a lifestyle brand? Are you also looking to expand beyond just the musicians and music industry?
Yeah, ambitions. If you ask me personally, yes. I think that, of course, everything we create. That's why I said it was a platform, right? It wasn't just built with the mindset of making it work for musicians. We felt it would be applicable to anyone. Certainly, entertainment, sports is a good sector. Others
just normal brands are good eventually as well. So from that perspective, we're super highly ambitious, but from a way of making it work, because I talked about the content aggregation and the intelligence and the news sites that we monitor and blah, blah, blah. That requires vertical expertise. I'm a great believer, even the artists I talked about, starting at the top versus starting at the bottom. Not talking about bots, but the benefit for artists, right? Not the bot brand messaging service, but the one that does fan engagement and does these 5 things for fans, right? Focusing, that's really what we're all about. And then I think as we prove that in the music industry, that's when we have to be careful in terms of timing. You've heard some of my lessons learned from the past, to scale up into a different industry, into a different vertical, or to make it horizontal as a platform, has to be ready for that. We have to first prove that we really can dominate this market before we should go to another market. But yeah, the platform is definitely